Seed of Rejection Part 1. There was a man called Cyprus, a well-respected pastor and a successful businessman. To many, he was a symbol of grace and prosperity, the man whose words stirred faith and whose touch healed. But few knew that behind the charisma and holy robe was a past Cyprus had buried long ago. Before he became a pastor, Cyprus had been a young, ambitious man, handsome, confident, and full of dreams. During his university days, he had dated a gentle, soft-spoken girl named Evelyn. She loved him deeply, and for a time, he seemed to love her too. But when Evelyn became pregnant, everything changed. Cyprus, then a struggling youth, panicked. "Evelyn, you can't keep it. I have my life ahead of me," he said coldly. She cried, pleaded, and begged him to take responsibility. But he walked away, never looking back. Months later, Evelyn gave birth to a set of twins, two boys who, according to everyone, looked exactly like Cyprus. Their resemblance was so striking that even Cyprus's younger sister once said, "Those boys are a mirror of my brother." No doubt. But Cyprus ignored it all. He had chosen a different path, one that led him to wealth, influence, and the pulpit. Years passed. Pastor Cyprus became the founder of Christ Sound Ministries, a church that grew rapidly. Within 5 years, his congregation exceeded 1,000 members, and his name became a beacon of faith. When he finally decided to marry, he chose Fidelia, a beautiful and elegant fashion designer who he met on his way to church one Sunday morning. Their wedding was the talk of the town, flashing cameras, exotic cars, and a choir that filled the air with angelic voices. I was there, one of the bridesmaids, watching how perfect they looked together. But beneath the perfection was a silence that grew louder with time. 6 years after marriage, no child. At first, they both prayed. Every vigil, every fasting program, every prophecy that came, Cyprus held on to faith. But Fidelia began to drift. Her once bright smile faded into worry. She became withdrawn, obsessed with motherhood. Soon, her desperation drove her from one pastor to another, from churches to prophets, and even native doctors. Cyprus noticed the change. One evening, after returning from a revival program, he found Fidelia sitting in the living room, dressed in a wrapper, her face pale and distant. "Fidelia," he said softly, "where have you been again?" She hesitated. "Just somewhere." He stepped closer. "You went to that soothsayer again, didn't you?" Her silence confirmed it. "Fidelia," he said, his voice trembling with both anger and hurt, "you don't need to chase signs and wonders. Trust God. Our time will come." Tears filled her eyes. "Cyprus, easy for you to say. You stand on the altar every Sunday, calling others mother of nations, and I, your wife, am mocked behind my back. Maybe your God doesn't want to answer me. Maybe another man of God will." From that day, Fidelia began rejecting everything connected to Cyprus's church. She stopped attending services, stopped using their cars, and began taking tricycles to her destinations, often to see spiritual men who promised her a child. Then one rainy evening, after visiting a notorious soothsayer in the outskirts of town, Fidelia boarded a tricycle heading home. The roads were slippery, the sky dark. Halfway through the journey, a speeding bus lost control and crashed into the tricycle. Fidelia's world went black. When she opened her eyes, she was on a hospital bed. Her right arm was bandaged, suspended by straps. A nurse stood by, shaking her head sadly. "Madam, you're lucky to be alive," she said softly. "One more second, and..." But Fidelia wasn't listening. Through the blur of pain and confusion, she whispered only one thing: "God, is this my punishment?" When news of the accident reached Pastor Cyprus, he was in his office, counseling a young couple about faith and patience in marriage. His phone vibrated quietly on the desk. It was Fidelia's younger sister, her voice trembling. "Pastor, Fidelia has been in an accident. She's in Merceland Hospital." For a moment, Cyprus froze. His heart pounded, but pride kept his voice calm. "I'll be there soon," he said, ending the call. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Fidelia lying weakly on the bed, her arm wrapped in white bandages. Her face was bruised, her eyes swollen from tears. Cyprus stood by the doorway for a long while, his Bible still in his hand. He sighed, then stepped closer. "The story gets more interesting in part 2.